Hello, everyone, and welcome to BFW 2401. This is part 2 of the recording, week 2. Now, if you allow me to share, this is part 2, and we are actually talking about the following risks. We are covering in this part the off-balance sheet risk, foreign exchange risk, country risk, and the technology risk. We already finished with interest rate risk, market risk, and credit risk. Now let's talk about off-balance sheet risk. Off-balance sheet risk is a new thing, actually, maybe to you, and it's related to banking. Now, as you can see in corporations, everything is either assets and liabilities, and it's recorded on the balance sheet or in the income statements. Now, in banks, we have so many operations that actually not recorded, and it's only promises because of this trust economy. The bank invests that confidence of the public in the banks and try to provide some type of services to the public, especially when they are when they provide guarantees for international trade or the local trade, or for the relationships between the businesses inside the country. So it's not recorded because it's not liability and asset, but rather they are promises. So we call them contingent liabilities or asset contracts. And they can be connected. We will talk about this in details in week 10, but we are talking here about the market-related and non-market-related types of balance sheet. So if the banks promise to give loans in the future, just a promise to give a loan in the future, then in this case, we call it loan commitment. We just promise to give the loan. So when the loan comes, we may encounter so many things. We may not find the funds. Maybe the interest rate where we signed this contract or the promise of giving this loan in the future has been changed, which means the interest rate has been increased while we are signing low interest rate loan. So many things can happen in the future when we promise to give a loan in the future, and we call it loan commitments. Now, this is not recorded in the balance sheet now, but it will be recorded in the future. Still, it's a contingent liability or promises. Now, we also do letter of credits, and letter of credits can be guaranteed. So the bank may issue a guarantee in the form of a letter of credit inside the country or outside the country, assuming that its customer who was receiving this letter of credit will perform well in front of the other parties. But if they don't perform well, then the other party will claim from the bank. So in this case, whether it's a promise by the bank's customer to pay other party payments or perform some type of services, if they perform on time as agreed, the bank is not liable. But if the bank does not, if the customer does not satisfy the contract with the third party, now because of the guarantee of the bank through this letter of credits, they will claim it from the bank. So as you can see again, it's not recorded in the assets and liabilities, but the bank has promised to pay in the future, which means it can be a future liability. Now, this is actually what we call them non-market related. This type, this is the non-market related. But actually we have market related, which is actually promises of contracts, of derivative contracts specifically, which is related to forward contracts, option contracts, future contracts. I don't know how many of you have taken derivatives, but derivatives is actually promises to buy or sell assets in the future, providing some type of contracts. We can use them for hedging, but sometimes we can use them for speculations also, which means we just trade them to get the profit if the prices increases, or we pay the other party if the prices decreases, if it is a forward contract, for example. So this, we call it derivative positions. So derivative positions, whether we are talking about non-market related or market related, and we call it market related because these derivative contracts actually are related, what they will be changed if the interest rate change or the exchange rate change or the equity market actually change. So if there is equity market change also, then in this case, excuse my writing here, I'm using this closer, okay? So if the interest rate change in the market or the foreign exchange or the equity, then in this case, derivative contracts includes, will make special, will make contingent liability in the future, especially if there is speculative activities. Now, let me go to the next one, which is the foreign exchange risk. This is should be very clear. See, after 1990, when this globalization come to the picture, banks actually can take deposit from outside and invest it inside the country, or they can take money from inside the country and invest it outside the country. For example, Australian market, Australian banks are doing so much lending and investment in Hong Kong and Singapore and some other countries, but especially they have this big relationship with Singapore and Hong Kong. Now, you can also buy bonds from other countries. You can trade in the American market while you are receiving the deposits from and the deposits and the borrowing from the local Australian market. You can invest in all those countries. And most of these banks actually invest also in the American market. So the value of the asset, if the investment currency, for example, if I am Australian bank and invested in Singapore and the Singaporean dollar drops, then actually my investment will drop. So actually, because there is no perfect correlation between the changes of the exchange rate between the Australian market, Australian dollars and the Singaporean dollar in this case. For example, here, even if you try to take from other markets deposits and invest it in other markets as loans, this relate, for example, if you take Malaysian ringgit to pounds, and this is, you make it as a deposit, and then you invest it in Japan, for example. So the correlation between the exchange between the ringgit to the yen may not be highly correlated to the exchange rate of the ringgit to the pound. This is what we are talking about. So you have to have very, very careful diversification in your international borrowing and international investment. Let me give you this example. This is just a graph to show you how this Japanese yen to the US dollar keep changing all the time. It's high, very, very high volatility. This is data from 1960 to 2010. You can see all those spikes, which means there is always changes in the exchange rate between those two currencies. If you are American market, if you are American bank and you are investing in Japan, as you can see, you will be affected by these fluctuations because the rate keep changing. Let me give you this example. It's very easy example. Say if you are Australian bank and you are investing in Singapore, in Japan. So, for example, the rate is now $1 Australian or one is equals 100. This is American dollar. If the American dollar, if you are American company, American bank, and you are investing in Japan, so the rate was $1 equal 100 yen. Now, if you buy 10 shares, and each 10 of Toyota, for example, and each one is 10,000, that means your investment is 100,000. And if there is a 10% increase, the return of your investment of those shares increased by 10%, that means end of the year, you have your investments already equals 110,000 yen. But the problem is if the dollar now equals 120, which means the yen has depreciated, becomes weaker. It was 100 and then dropped to 120. Then in this case, actually your investment is less because you will divide this 110 by 120 to see your investment. Also, you have gaining. Your investment now equals only 916. While you invested 1,000. End of the day, also you make gains, and Toyota stocks were very well, but because of the exchange rate between the Japanese and the American dollar, you are actually making 84. This is what we call foreign exchange risk. Let me move to the next risk. This is a country and or sovereign risk. This is very easy. Actually, it's related to you may invest in other countries like government bonds, or you may invest in other countries by providing loans to companies in other countries. And suddenly the foreign government prevent for one reason or the other, geopolitical risks or because of economic problems in that side this country. So inside that the country where you invest in, they prevent any transfer of any amounts in the foreign currencies to outside. And therefore, the payments that is coming from your borrower in that country will stop. Not because they cannot pay, not because of a credit risk of your borrower, but because the foreign government prevented the transfer because of those, what we call country risk. So this is how it works. And it happened before, actually. We have seen in 1982, when there was just drop, the Mexican and Brazilian government, they just say they are not going to pay any loans outside the country, and they have huge, actually, loans received from Citibank and other Western creditors. And then those banks actually, because of the government's refused to pay because of their economic problems, then they actually suffered significant losses, those banks who are invested. This is also country risk. And there is nothing to do, actually. If it is coming from the government, it looks like it belongs to those geopolitical issues, and you may not be able, it can be geopolitical, it can be pure political, where actually the lenders have nothing to do with in this case. They can even talk to their government, and their governments cannot do anything about it. So it's just a prohibition payments from the borrower's country, and this is what's happening. Sometimes, like what we have seen, you can read about this case. I think Enron Indian case, Enron has a contract of $300 million with India to build what we call power plants and all those issues. And then in 1993, a new government came to India, and actually the legislators and the politicians think that contract should not be done, and Enron, which is American company, should not do what we call or continue in this power plants. So they think the Indians are actually able to do it. So the Indian government canceled the contracts, and there was a losses to Enron company. Now, if Enron was a borrower from any other bank in the U.S. to carry this project of the power plants in India, then actually there will be the banks who also providing the financing will be under these losses. Now, let me go to the next one, which is technology and operational risk. Just to make it simple, technology means, technology is everywhere, and this technology is very progressive. And when we talk about banking, we can see all those systems. Those systems can be obsolete, can be unsecure, which means less cybersecurity issues, and they can be hacked. So all of these things related to technologies, all this system glitches, all those problems that may happen to the technologies that the bank are using is called technology risk. Now, we also, the other thing is, if there is failure of the people who are operating, or there is failure of the people who are running the bank, we call it operational risk. So the failure of technology, we call it technology risk, and the failure of people, we call it operational risk. And of course, we can expect always this technology risk to continue, actually, as there is always this technologies coming to the picture, and innovations keep improving the systems. So you buy a system now, maybe in a year or maybe less, you can find that your system is actually not up to the standards of the competitors. Now, what is the purpose of the technology? Is actually to decrease cost, to increase profit, and to capture new markets. And if you are not able to do this, and you have to substitute the systems, then actually you are under technology risk. There is two terms here, something called economic of scale, and we already know it, which is the ability to lower the average cost of operations by expanding its output to financial services. Like when we have a system, and the system, online system, and can serve the payment system can serve all those transactions inside the bank. I can keep security, can do all these things. So whether my operations cover 30 or 40 branches or cover 100 or 120 branches, my cost can be decreased if I increase the use of these technologies or in this investment. But the economic of scope imply the financial institution ability to generate cost synergies by producing more than one output with the same inputs. And this technology actually is very helpful, and this is economic of scope. For example, if I collect information about all those customers that are taking credit cards now, and because I collect the information about the income, the age, the education of the borrowers, I can now offer them from this database of credit cards. I can develop from this category a new category for car loans or housing loans and start to offer them knowing their age, income, profession, even gender. I can offer them different type of loans, including car loans, housing loans. So this is what we call economic of the scope, which means the information was collected for credit cards, but I can use this information, and technology will help me to manipulate all these data, and we can generate more information and increase the use of this different technology outputs. Technology risk has been a big problem. There were so many cases, and I think it's the book. If you don't have the book, it's okay. But actually, all of those banks have faced some type of technology risk during those times, and you can read about them even online if you like. Operational risk, as I told you, it includes either intentional misuse, which is the fraud, or unintentional like errors, human errors. And this can be happened by the managers and the employees. I'm done with part 2. Hopefully it was in a good pace. Thank you very much, and I will see you in the third part. Bye-bye.